Okay. Everybody raise your hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay, thank you. First, I think we're set for a compliance hearing, yes. And I think there's some other motions on the table. For compliance, Mr. Sturmer, you may begin. We'll just go through it, right? I think we have till 2:00. So does everybody probably need to allocate time? Who's aligned, who's not, so I can figure it out that way.
I think the department, Miss Mystic and Miss McClure are all aligned.
Okay. And Miss Kay, are you doing this? Is Miss Kabbalah coming today, or are you? Should I sign the withdraw? Are you on now all the way?
I'm here all the way.
Okay. Okay.
Miss Kabbalah plans to sign in. She said she had to do an appearance, but she knew Miss Kay was here.
Okay.
She wanted me to know she would.
I just want to sign the withdrawal orders at the right time so everybody will get paid. So let's do this. Why don't we do 30 minutes and 30 minutes?
Yes, ma'am.
So, okay. So Ms. Shermer, y'all have 30 minutes and we need to go over a little bit. That's okay, but not real long because we have a special setting at 2. So Mr. Sturmer, you may begin.
Judge, I'd just like to briefly call Mary Braley.
Okay, please.
Miss Braley, can you state your full name, please?
Mary Brawley.
Brawley, I'm sorry.
It's fine.
You're the FPSS worker for this case, correct?
Correct.
Without really getting into all the stuff that I know Ms. Jourdain is going to testify about, can you just update the court on the parents' progress and services?
Right now we were ordered at the last hearing to do couples therapy. We have not begun that. We did have a Miss Flowers that was going to do the couples therapy, but she feels that the couples therapy needs to be in person and that it needs to be with a male therapist. So I have referred the parents to Mr. Dorsey.
Okay. And whenever you talk to the parents, are they receptive of attending? Let me back up real quick. You were calling it couples counseling. It's
co-parenting. Yes, sir. Sorry.
Are they receptive of attending those classes in person?
Mr. O'Neill is not.
And what's the reason for that, or what's he saying why he doesn't want to do that?
His medical conditions.
Okay. Has he given you any indication as to whether he will ever be able to attend in person, or is he going to always need it to be virtual?
He has not said either way.
Okay. So does he do anything outside of his home?
According to him, he does not.
Okay. So have you asked him when the last time was that he left his home?
I have not asked them that. No, sir.
Okay. You said that you've already made the referral to the new counselors, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And have they reached out to set up their initial appointments and everything?
I know Ms. Wingrove has set up hers. I'm not sure if Mr. O'Neill has done it as of yet.
Will they be required to do any prior assessments, psychosocial or anything prior to beginning that?
Yes, they'll have to do a psychosocial.
Okay. And is it correct that the mother already did that with the prior therapist?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Did father do that with the prior therapist?
No, sir.
Well, what was the reason for that?
I'm not sure exactly when I spoke to her secretary, she said that Mr. O'Neill, she had called and then they never scheduled again.
This time.
Okay, we'll just move on. Is there any other services that the parents are being asked to complete at this time?
No, sir.
Okay. And I don't really want to get into the things that Ms. Jourdain is going to testify about, but is the department in support of the recommendation that Ms. Jourdain is making for father's possession and access to stop at this time?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the department's recommending that the child reside with the mother and that any contact with the father be virtual contact?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll pass the witness.
Anybody have any questions, Ms. Brawley? Did I say it right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll mess it up. Anybody have any questions, Ms. Brawley?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay, Ms. Kay, go on.
Ms. Frawley, are you aware that my client reached out and scheduled an appointment with Stephen Dorsey yesterday and that it's set for February the 8th?
No, ma'am, I'm not aware of that. He did not inform me of that.
Okay, I have submitted several exhibits for this hearing. I don't know if you have seen them, but Respondent Bothers Exhibit number 3 is the confirmation of that appointment. It should have been provided to your attorney prior to this hearing. So if Mr. Sturmer was able to share that with you, would that address the concern that you have about the co-parenting?
No, as long as he's doing it, that's what we're asking.
Okay, so if he's got an appointment scheduled for February the 8th, and I have that exhibit today to show the court that I'll put in through my client later, that would address your concern.
Yes.
All right. Now, as far as the medical condition, I did provide an exhibit, Respondent Bothers Exhibit 4, which is a letter from a Dr. Diana Fountain, laying out his medical condition and advising that he's not to drive, leave the house, and his seizure triggers. You've not seen that?
I don't believe I have. I've been out of the office, so anything that's been submitted, I probably have not seen as of yet.
Okay. If you did receive medical confirmation from his doctor that he has epilepsy and can't drive or leave the house, would you be willing to set up services for him that accommodate his medical condition?
We would have to, yes, ma'am.
Okay, fantastic. You know that per the last court hearing, my client was to communicate with the therapist via the portal. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
And are you aware that he made multiple attempts to contact Ms. Jourdain through her portal?
I am not aware. I don't know if he has or not.
So she's not shared that with you?
No.
Okay. If I have an exhibit today that's Respondent Bothers Exhibit 1 that lays out multiple contact attempts through the portal, through the court order, would that address your concerns regarding him not making contact with the therapist or setting up therapy services for his child?
Correct.
Okay, so if all of your concerns are addressed today, would it still be necessary to stop his visitation with his child?
I don't have an answer for that. I mean, that's something that the child's therapist was recommending.
But you're here in support of the therapist's recommendation, correct?
Correct.
So if the circumstances of this case are different from the circumstances that have been communicated by the therapist, would you need to change your recommendation?
Possibly.
Possibly. Okay. Pass the witness, Judge.
Thank you, Ms. Kay. Anybody else have any questions, Ms. Brawley? Next witness, Mr. Sturmer.
I'd like to call Angela Jourdain, please.
Okay, please. Ms. Jourdain, she's been sworn.
Ms. Jourdain, you've been assigned as the therapist for the child, is that correct?
Okay, thank you. Yes, I didn't know how to unmute. My apologies.
You've been assigned as the child's therapist, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When did you first start meeting with the child?
At the end of December, the last week.
Okay. How many appointments have you had with the child at this point?
I believe 4.
Okay. I understand there was an incident that happened at the first therapy session, which I believe was on December 27th. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And as far as your understanding of the court order, was that the significant others of each of the parents were not supposed to be involved in the child's therapy? Is that your understanding of the order?
No, sir.
Okay. What was your understanding then?
My understanding was they were provided a few therapists to choose from. Mom chose them, specifically chose me from that list. I didn't have any information at that time. I reached out to all parties, and it was indicated that it was up to me which parties participated in session, and that I could run my sessions the way that I traditionally do, but it would be absent of any harassment. And if there was any issue where I felt harassed, to reach back out to the parties concerned and make any arrangements necessary to conduct therapy the way that I typically would.
Okay. Well, can you just give us an update on what exactly happened on December 27th then?
Prior to December 27th, there had been quite a bit of communication between all parties because I was unaware of the court order. And there was that clarification made that I just stated. The communication was initiated because I was receiving numerous emails, text messages, and phone calls stating that it was Mr. O'Neill, and I replied that I was attempting to clarify the conditions and circumstance, or even know if he was the parent. Mom did clarify that he was the parent. He was added to the portal, and then we started getting phone calls that were impersonating mom. And the text messages and emails continued, and they were in a threatening manner. So I reached out to the court and requested that he not communicate to me other than through the portal to schedule an appointment, that he was not to come here. No emails, no text messages, no phone calls. It was beginning to be excessive, and I did not know if it was him. And I received confirmation that everyone had received that order. And on December 27th, mom came in and she was on the couch in the lobby. I stepped away for a moment, came back, and Kinsley was in a chair, and Christy Hardwick was standing in front of her, blocking her view so that Kinsley could not look around the room or move. My security was there. My assistant was there. And to be discreet, I didn't want to create an issue. I asked mom and Kinsley to come to my office, and Ms. Hardwick started raising her voice and became what I perceived to be erratic. And she grabbed Kinsley by the arm and started dragging her up the stairs and out the door. I told her she would take her hands off from her, and I asked her to leave, and she left, and I locked my door, and I asked security to come assist. And then we called the police department, and mom and Kinsley came to my office to begin session, but we were all rather shook up.
Okay. Since then, have you had any contact with Ms. Harwick?
Not directly, but through the police department, because she pressed charges against me.
And what are those charges?
She has, I think, assault with injury.
So what are the allegations then?
She states that I assaulted her and Kinsley in my lobby and injured them, that Kinsley has bruises, and that she is scared to come see me.
Okay. And what's your position on that allegation?
Well, she shouldn't have been in my office to begin with.
Hold on, Ms. Jordan. What, Ms. Kay, I can't hear you.
If Mr. Sturmer is going to ask Ms. Jordan about pending criminal charges wherein she is the accused party, she should be admonished as to her Fifth Amendment rights before she testifies about that.
I don't think that was his question.
He asked her what her position was on the charges, and the charges are on her. So if she's, I mean, to the court, I just, out of an abundance of caution.
Okay, I guess I heard the question different. Mr. Turner.
We'll move on, Judge. We'll
Okay.
move on.
Okay, thank you.
Since that incident, have you had any contact with Sean O'Neill?
No, sir. I don't know that I've ever had contact with Mr. O'Neill directly.
Okay. And whenever that incident occurred on December 27th, what was Kinsley's demeanor following that?
Very calm, very normal. I kind of jokingly said, "So what brings you in for counseling?" And she pointed behind her towards the lobby and said, "Really?" So she had a little sense of humor about it, like this was fairly normal.
Okay. And so is one of the goals in your therapy to address some of these parenting issues that she's had to deal with?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What else are y'all planning on addressing in therapy?
So one of the things that I do is I really take a big look at the family, dynamic, family system, and the context of anything that me and Kinsley would talk about. And so I'm going to take a look at the system and see where we need to make some changes in the entire family system, but also equip Kinsley with some coping skills as well as like means to articulate appropriately like what she needs and know who to talk to, and just sort of assess things that make her feel safe to do so.
Based on the sessions that you've had with Kinsley, do you have concerns with her being with her father at this time?
Yes.
And what are those concerns?
So my concern is the bizarre nature of these interactions. This isn't typical or something that's within normal limits. Like the reaction of getting to Kinsley being at counseling as if they're trying to, whoever I spoke with is saying that they're trying to prevent counseling from happening, which concerns me, that there's something they don't want discovered or discussed. There's just a dynamic that does not seem appropriate at this time, and she expresses being scared. So I feel like we need to take a break and figure out what that is so she can feel safe.
Do you have any concerns for her being with her mother?
No.
But Kinsley hasn't told you what exactly it is that she's scared of, right?
She told me she will, but not yet.
Objection hearsay as to the statements of the child.
Okay, well, she's already answered, so it's sustained.
So at this time, though, you're recommending that possession and access by Mr. Sean O'Neill be put on hold, and only allow him to have basically virtual visitation with the child. Why are you making that recommendation?
I would like I would like Kinsley to feel empowered on her choice to feel safe. And that was one of the things that we had discussed. And I have been described a history from Kinsley and her mother that indicates she had a history of a positive relationship with her father up until Miss Hardwick was introduced to the relationship. So I would like to subtract Miss Hardwick from the relationship and put Kinsley in something that she feels safe as a setting, and assess how that relationship between Kinsley and Dad is independently.
But obviously, in order to make that recommendation, you feel that something that's going on with Mr. O'Neill is going to hinder Kinsley's progress in therapy, right?
I do, but I can't concretely say that. I can't evidence that. So that's why I took a step back and was slowly withdrawing factors to evidence whatever my hypothesis is.
Okay. And if the court does order that Mr. O'Neill's possession and access stop at this time, when do you think that you would begin to see progress in Kinsley's therapy?
I can't state that precisely, but the plan that I had intended and expressed to some of the parties involved is I would like to see if Mr. O'Neill would meet with me separately via telehealth, simultaneously as seeing Kinsley, and then work towards them doing a family therapy together, with the goal of family therapy occurring hopefully by spring break, and then reassessing the situation for spring break.
And so through telehealth, you wouldn't be required to meet with him face to face, right?
Correct.
How beneficial do you think that therapy would be if Mr. O'Neill's paramour is constantly being within earshot of those sessions?
Well, if it's consistent with the current situation, that would be quite hindering, and it would really affect our ability to assess the situation accurately.
But given the track record that we're dealing with right now, do you think that there's any way to ensure that she's not interfering with the sessions?
No, sir.
Okay. I'll pass the witness.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions, Ms. Jordan?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Go on, Ms. Kay.
Ms. Jordan, you stated previously that you've never had any contact with my client. Is that correct?
Not confirmed or directly that I'm aware of.
Okay. So as far as you know, the person that was calling in and emailing impersonating mom, you don't know who that person is, do you?
No, but I do know that it comes from the number that's on file for Mr.
Okay.
O'Neill.
But you don't know that it's my client, do you?
No, ma'am.
Was the voice on the other end of the phone a male voice or a female voice?
It was both.
It was both. Okay. And you've never seen him in person, right?
No, ma'am.
The history that you say you've got about his relationship with Kinsley comes only from Kinsley and her mother, correct?
Correct.
And you've involved mom in the sessions, right?
Yes, ma'am.
But you've not made any attempts to involve my client in the sessions with his child.
That's not accurate.
Okay. You understand my client was court ordered to only communicate with you via the Haven of Hope portal, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And he's made numerous attempts to reach out to you via the portal, hasn't he?
No, ma'am. And I have a HIPAA compliant log that records everything that happens, and I can provide that. He reached out one time on January 6th, and he was responded to. If it was him, I don't know that it was.
So he did reach out to you via the portal on January 6th, correct?
I do not know, ma'am.
You do not know.
Somebody reached out to me through his portal on January 6th, and that was responded to.
So at this point, you really can't testify to the court that my client has done anything wrong, can you?
That would not be my job to testify if he did or did not. I work with Kinsley and assess her response and her demeanor and her ability to work within that relationship.
Okay, but he's not the one that came up to your office and made you call the cops, right?
Well, no, nobody made me call the police, but no, he was not at the office that I know of. He may have been, but Miss Hardwick was the one who was in the office.
So your testimony today is that he was not in your office and you didn't see him.
Correct.
All right. And again, you can't testify to the court whether or not he's the one that's made any of these contacts with your office, right?
Including in the portal. Yes, ma'am.
Were you aware that the caseworker was supposed to transport the child for that counseling session?
I don't believe that to be accurate.
Okay. Well, how exactly was he supposed to get Kinsley there for the session?
He was not. He was advised to schedule in the portal to request an appointment. And when he does so, the system would send him a link.
Okay. But the session that his girlfriend brought Kinsley to, that was during his visitation time with Kinsley, right?
Oh, I don't know, ma'am.
Okay. So if Kinsley's with him and he can't drive, is he supposed to put an 8-year-old child in an Uber alone and send her to your office? Would that have been better?
Ma'am, I do counseling. I don't make transportation arrangements.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out the issue here because y'all are saying that the issue is that the girlfriend drove the child. If the counseling session is scheduled when the child is with him and he can't drive and CPS is not showing up to drive the child, how is he supposed to get her there? Is she supposed to walk? I don't know.
That is not something that has been said by me, ma'am, and I did not hear that being said. The issue at hand was that Miss Hardwick came into the office and acted aggressively, and somebody has been contacting me aggressively. And Mr. O'Neill was provided a means to schedule and communicate, and he did not schedule. And when he did communicate, or somebody did in his portal one time, he was responded to and provided the information to schedule, and he has not done so. And if Hardwick did bring Kinsley, which is fine, I have an assistant that could walk out and get her. I have a security that could go out and get her to be in compliance. Kinsley's old enough to walk to the door, and her mother was there and apparently communicating. So there were other options than Miss Hardwick coming in, and she did not need to act aggressively towards our staff.
Okay. I'll pass the witness, Judge.
Thank you, Ms. Kay. Anybody else have any questions, Ms. Jordan?
Just a couple, Judge.
Ms. McClure?
Yes, Ms. Jordan, I know that you have not had a lot of sessions with the child yet, but are there any concerns that you are beginning to get about possible intimidation from the father and or his girlfriend?
Yes, ma'am.
What kind of things are leading you to have that concern?
After the police had called and indicated that there was an investigation, I pulled the footage at my office just to see what I could provide to them or not for the situation. And I had not noticed previously until I looked at that video that Miss Hardwick was sitting in the back seat with Kinsley and got in and out of the back seat, not only coming but going, and that she was holding Kinsley by the wrist and pulling her towards the clinic and away from the clinic and pulling her into the car, not holding her hand, but pulling her by the wrist. And then when she came into the lobby, she was standing directly in front of the chair, so Kinsley could not see past her or stand up or move.
Did that behavior strike you as odd?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you believe that some time without direct contact, face-to-face contact with dad and the girlfriend might give you some time to work with the child to help her deal with these issues?
Yes, ma'am.
Is your goal to be able to help the child and the dad so that they can have a wholesome, productive relationship?
Yes, ma'am.
And so your goal is not to keep them apart. Your goal is to find a way to have them have a beneficial relationship after you've been able to deal with some of these issues.
Yes, ma'am.
That's the witness, Judge.
Anybody else have any questions, Ms. Jordan?
No,
I
we
do.
don't.
I do.
Ms. Bishop, you do, okay.
Could you clarify, and it could be you cut out or I'm not hearing well. You said I want to take a step back and remove some factors or remove something so we can see what's going on. Could you expand on that more if that makes sense, what I just said?
Yes, ma'am. Rather than making a big jump and removing, and isolating it down to just mom and Kinsley, I'd like to remove different factors and try to eliminate like secondary causation of the stress and make sure that we can determine the specific correlation and direct interventions towards that in the family system so that it can be corrected and get back to a healthy place that they were.
Okay. Have there been any concerns from Kinsley about either parent having her raise her shirt or take her shirt off and photos taken of her?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Have there been any concerns raised about being talked to about the other parent? Dad, or I'll call Miss Hardwick, or even mom talking about dad?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And your recommendation, as I understand it now, is to take a brief stop of the in-person visitations with Kinsley and her dad. And you're also willing to do some therapy between Kinsley and her father
Yes, ma'am.
through the telehealth.
Yes.
Would Kinsley be able, like if they brought her to my office and she had privacy in my office, not at mom's house, not at dad's, would you be able, and I don't know how that works, to be able to have Kinsley and her dad, even if they're in separate places?
Yes,
Through the
ma'am.
telehealth.
And I wouldn't even mind doing sessions in person. I would just need to make specific like security arrangements in case there's another incident. The only reason I specifically say telehealth was in consideration of his disability.
Right, it's
So-
my understanding, it's my understanding
okay.
dad's not able to leave. So Kinsley could be at your office with you and then
Yeah.
dad through the telehealth. That's probably better. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I understand. All right, thank you so much. That's all I have. Pass the witness.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Briefly, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Kay.
So, Ms. Jordan, if I'm understanding correctly, you want to engage in an experiment to see if you can figure out what's going on with Kinsley. Is that right?
No, ma'am. I am working through assessment.
Okay. And so what you want to do is you want to take her father out of her life to see if you can figure out if that's the problem.
No, ma'am. I'm addressing specifically what she states are the stressors and permitting her to be empowered in that decision-making process based on her ability to articulate intelligibly that she has valid reasons for indicating and identifying specific stressors. And so I'm going to withdraw specific minimal stressors to see if that is accurate and that does alleviate some of that strain that she has, because she's indicating that it's causing her not to sleep and she doesn't feel comfortable talking and that she's fearful. And if she's accurate, then we can see an improvement and then work back towards integrating those into her family system again.
Okay. And in order to do this, her father has to have no contact with her other than these telehealth sessions.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. If the department was to supervise this contact with the child, would you still be able to engage in this treatment effectively?
Yes, if the department could supervise visitation, I think that would be a valid negotiation for safety.
Okay, I'll pass the witness.
Thank you, Ms. Kay. Anybody else?
Just one follow-up on that.
Okay, Ms. McClure.
The department's not going to be able to supervise for an entire weekend. So how long, if there was a CPS supervised visit, how long do you think that would be appropriate for?
Oh, is that in regards to me? I apologize. I would have to leave the period of time for visitation up to, the other parties involved, because one reason I hadn't addressed that specifically is his inability to leave the home. So I didn't think that was an option that we could do.
So it sounds like it might be a short supervised visit since they're not going to be able to stay there all weekend or.
Yes, and it would need to be assured that Ms. Hardwick isn't available to Kinsley. And my concern with doing like supervised online is if Ms. Hardwick was in proximity of being online, and Mr. O'Neill doesn't leave, so it can be done in person. So that's why I hadn't really addressed like a supervised visitation specifically.
Okay, so it's something that you are not opposed to. It's just something that would have to be figured out.
Yes, there's a lot of restrictive dynamics to it, and I don't know on top of those restrictive dynamics what is available through the department.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, Judge.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions, Ms. Jordan?
No, Your Honor.
No, ma'am.
Ms. Jordan, I have a couple questions. Explain to me what you mean by Mr. O'Neill's portal. Who sets that up? Give me some info on that, please.
I work through a HIPAA compliant software program called Simple Practice, and the clients can independently go to my website and self-enroll. And when they self-enroll, it creates their own portal, or they can give me the information and I can put it in. And what that is it gives them an opportunity to have access to their own documents, upload their own documents. They can schedule their own appointments, schedule phone calls, they can message, and it's all HIPAA compliant. When I have a parent that has a child with me, I add them as a contact on the child's file, and it gives them permission to do the same for the child. But I also turn the parent into a client. And I do this with caseworkers as well. I make caseworkers clients so that they can schedule phone calls and have that safe communication as well. So at any time of day, Mr. O'Neill can log in using the email that he provided and have access to schedule, communicate, and look at documents or upload them.
Okay, so do you, and I'm not a computer person either, so you have to just bear with me. So do you create this, who starts this community, who makes this available? I know I know that's not a good question. I know you make it available, but say I'm one of your client, your patients. I don't know what word you use, patients. Let's say patient. Do I initiate the thing, or do you initiate it? Or do you understand my question?
Oh, I do. So you can initiate it independently through my website, but some people don't like to do that because the system will ask you to put in a credit card to confirm that you're not like a robot.
Okay.
And so if that's the case, then you can just provide me the information and I can do it independently. It can be done either way. For Mr. O'Neill, he provided me that information and I added him to the portal.
Okay. So he started, and Miss Kabbalah, I don't know what's going on with his camera. I don't know if he's recording this. I hope he's not recording it, or so I'm seeing a whole bunch of little individual pictures go across his screen. So, Mr. O'Neill, I don't know what's the deal with your thing, but you better not be recording this. I'm the only one that can record. So, okay. So Mr. O'Neill or somebody on his behalf initiated that for him, correct?
Yes, through text message.
Okay. From the number that he gave you, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. And my questions are kind of jumping around because they're based on what everybody else asked you. Okay. They're not in any type of good order. When you said that your recommendation that Mr. O'Neill have some virtual visits with Kinsley. Who do you suggest that those would be supervised? And if so, who would be the supervisor?
Well, I was recommending like a family therapy type thing with me essentially supervising and sort of navigating. I really don't know how to request assurances that Ms. Hardwick isn't part of that. I mean, I don't know how to eliminate that as a concern. But I know without Kinsley feeling that assurance, she may not have the same progress or feelings of safety. If we're to do visitation online, I'm not completely opposed to that. But again, I have the same concerns as Kinsley is concerned that Ms. Hardwick will be listening. And I don't know how to assure that she wouldn't unless Mr. O'Neill went to like a location. As far as visitation goes, as far as counseling goes, I wouldn't mind doing an extended like family counseling and then doing like an extra hour at the end where we're observing online. It's just the factor of Ms. Hardwick being involved. And I don't know if supervised visitation centers would participate in that as far as online supervision, but that could be an option as well.
Okay. Since 12/27, when you saw Kinsley and this incident occurred, was that your first time that you met with Kinsley?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I believe you said you've had 4 visits with her since that time?
Yes, ma'am.
And how's y'all's rapport? How are y'all getting along? Is she opening up to you?
Yes, ma'am. Typically, I do the first session or 2 with the parent or parents in the room and just make it very casual. And I let them know that I don't take children to a back room until the kids feel safe with me because I'm a stranger. And so I let her know to tell me when she was ready. And we've got to the point where we'll spend about 10-15 minutes checking in with mom together. And then she'll tell me it's time for me to take her to the bathroom. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. When you you went back and you pulled your video camera, whatever you call it, from the 12/27 visit, you said that the Miss Hardwick, the girlfriend, I'm just going to call her that. I'm not sure her correct name, was in the back seat with Kinsley. Who was driving?
So I don't know. I can only tell you what's reported to me, and I don't know if that's hearsay, but it was two different vehicles, one that picked her up, and one that dropped her off.
Okay. Could you see anybody else in the vehicles?
Yes, ma'am. It was a male driver both times.
Could you see if there are any other passengers in the vehicles?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so you don't know if Mr. O'Neill was in the vehicle either?
No, ma'am.
Miss Jordan, when the very first time I heard this case, and I'm not, this might sound critical, and I don't mean it to sound critical. It's just sort of, it's just gonna say it, okay? My ruling was that no doctors, therapists, school are to consult with anyone not a party to the case. And I don't think I said it right. Let's see. No school providers, doctors, et cetera, consult with anyone not a party to this case. So that, that means only mom and dad, obviously. But I also wanted mom and dad to be involved in Kinsley's therapy.
Yes, ma'am.
And why, explain to me why Mr. O'Neill hasn't already started being involved in Kinsley's therapy.
I'm going to answer that, but is it possible that I asked Mr. O'Neill to turn off his camera because I am epileptic and it keeps flashing and I'm starting to feel really woozy?
Okay. We have a lot of epilepsy going on. Yes. Mr. O'Neill, make sure your camera doesn't, just do something with your camera.
Oh, that's
No,
worse.
I don't think that, no, you can't shine the lights.
It just did this big flashing green,
Yeah.
like, you know how a TV used to go? It just did all this green stuff. It was
Okay,
weird.
it's
Like,
starting.
Yeah, I apologize. I was trying to take my picture and cover his, but it wasn't working. I do not know why Mr. O'Neill has not participated. I know that it was just such a mess at the beginning because so many messages going back and forth between so many parties, and we were trying to figure out what was happening and who was what we were allowed to do. But it has been made known to him that he can access me through the portal, including that if there is any concerns, he can schedule phone calls on Fridays. I have I keep Friday free for emergency cases, new clients, and phone calls. And I know he was restricted from calling me, but he could schedule it. We could do it through telehealth. He could have scheduled a telehealth appointment. There's just a lot of options, and there hasn't been any action regarding that.
Ms. Jordan, you heard Ms. Brawley's testimony about co-parenting.
Yes, ma'am.
Why? I mean, I'm a little confused about why don't we, I don't know. I'm not a therapist, obviously. I do know a whole lot about epilepsy though. So I'm having some problems with some of the stuff I'm hearing. Why, in your opinion, do we need to do co-parenting now? Do we need to do individual therapy with Kinsley? I mean, it almost seems sort of like cart before the horse. If we haven't even gotten to the root of the child's scaredness, if that's a word, or some of her problems, why do we do co-parenting? Would you recommend co-parenting now or later on?
It's really hard to say because I haven't met with Mr. O'Neill yet. That's why I wanted to see him independently and integrate Kinsley, because I do know Kinsley and I know she would like that relationship to be healthier. And I just like to figure out from Mr. O'Neill's perspective, like what's happening. What's interesting is like I haven't heard a co-parenting issue, not truly from anybody. Even Kinsley feels like for the most part until this has happened that mom and dad got along great, and mom feels the same way. So I mean, maybe they need co-parenting, but I'm kind of missing that puzzle piece right now.
How long did, and based on your, talking to Kinsley and your, involvement in this case, how long has Dad's girlfriend been involved with him? Or do you know?
It sounds like it was like maybe August of 2021.
Okay. And, any issues with Heather's paramour, boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever her significant other?
Not that's been mentioned to me at this time, no.
Okay. I know you've seen Kinsley 4 times since 12/27. Are you seeing her weekly?
Yes, ma'am.
How often, if the parents were to be involved in this family therapy or, or to see you, how often could that occur?
So we could probably do that weekly if we can coordinate everybody's schedule. And, it wouldn't be a bad idea as we move through family therapy to introduce mom into it as well. And just sort of smooth those things out. But I would like it to be Dad and Kinsley independently, and then we could probably do individual and family together, and then discuss about mom joining in too, and sort of just reintegrate the system in a healthy way.
So you could coordinate that whole deal, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I mean, theoretically.
Okay. I mean, I don't want to have to be the one to tell you or tell everybody else, you got to go weekly. You got to, I mean, I leave things. I don't want to micromanage. So,
Yeah. I know that sometimes in the CPS court system, we'd like to do individual and family therapy with separate therapists and not put all our eggs in one basket. And I could respect that if we did that also in this situation. But I find when it's very complex like this, there's a benefit to having the same person do individual as family so that some of those complexities can be ironed out with smooth communication.
I totally agree with that. I think the less irons in the fire and the less these kids have to talk to people, the better off everybody is. So hey, you're preaching to the choir in that regard. I don't have anything else. Anybody have any more questions, Miss Jourdain?
No, ma'am.
No? Okay. Miss Jourdain, you're welcome to stay or leave or watch on YouTube, whatever you prefer. I'm sure you're busy.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're excused. Okay, thank you. Mr. Sturmer, next witness, please.
I don't have any other witnesses this time, Judge.
Okay, thank you. Ms. McClure, do you have any witnesses?
No, ma'am.
Okay, Ms. Kay, do you have any witnesses?
I'll call my client.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jourdain, just look the other way, I guess.
I will.
Okay, thank you. Go on, Ms. Kay.
Judge, I'd like permission to share my screen so that I can share my exhibits.
Okay, Ms. Trinidad can get that. I see something.
Okay. Let me get into my Dropbox. Okay, can you guys see my Dropbox now?
I don't know what a Dropbox is, but I see something with a bunch of things.
Well, he's testifying, so,
Gotcha.
okay. Mr. O'Neill, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I'm showing you what I'm offering is your exhibit number 1. Can you see this on your screen?
Yeah.
Okay, what is this?
This is the appointments that Ms. Wingrove has made for the therapist.
Okay, so these are your attempts to go through Ms. Jourdain's portal to schedule meetings with her, correct?
And there too, there's a conversation box.
Okay, I'm gonna get down to that now.
Okay.
Now, these all say that they're pending, so what does that mean?
Okay. I would assume that they haven't been approved yet.
Okay. How many times would you say that you tried to go through the portal to schedule a conversation with Ms. Jourdain?
Yeah. Well, I didn't get access to the portal until like the first week of January. I tried calling the office to get it set up prior to Christmas.
Okay. But how many times would you say that you tried to go through the portal to schedule a conversation with Ms. Jourdain?
Yeah. At least 2-3 times, at least.
All right, and none of them were ever responded to or approved by Ms. Jordan.
No, they were not.
Okay. So let me come down here to y'all's conversation. Is this where you had sent her a message?
It's, yes,
Okay. And did you indicate to her in this message that you were trying to follow court orders and complete the intake process the way the court had asked you to?
Yeah.
And she never was willing to do that with you?
I had no response.
I'm going to show you Respondent Father's Exhibit 2. Come on now. No, I don't want to start it. I just want to open it. Okay. What are these messages?
Okay, those are from the therapist.
So these are text messages from Ms. Jordan to you?
Yes,
So this is another contact attempt that you had made to try to communicate with her about therapy.
yes.
Hold on, let's wait a second for the judge to come back.
Oh, come on, God. I don't know what's going on with my camera.
You can turn your camera off if you want.
Okay, huh. I'm still seeing on the screen, but it's turned over now.
Okay. So is this another contact attempt between you and Ms. Jordan where you tried to reach out to do paperwork and schedule time to visit with her about your daughter?
Yes,
And you've indicated to her in this text message thread that you've had no response from her office and that you'd like them to call you so you could get your intake done. Is that right?
yes,
Okay. And this was her response?
yeah,
Is this the confirmation of your first session being scheduled with Stephen Dorsey?
yes, it is.
And were you ordered to do that by this court?
Yes, I was.
And this is the person that the department indicated was supposed to do your co-parenting classes, right?
Yes, and he has no issue at all with doing telemed conferencing for it.
What is this?
That's the release from my primary doctor as far as my medical condition.
Okay. And per this letter, you're to limit travel, movement, and overstimulation through light and sound.
Yes,
And you're to be on these restrictions at least until June 30th, 2023,
at a minimum, yes.
at a minimum.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Sean, I'm gonna be real blunt with you. Do you have a problem with your daughter going to therapy?
No, not a bit. I would love for her to go to therapy.
Do you think she needs therapy?
If it's handled appropriately and both parents are actively involved, yes.
Okay. Who was supposed to transport Kinsley to the therapy session where the police were called and we had all this ridiculousness?
I was supposed to provide transportation for her. That was handled due to my medical conditions.
And how did you handle it?
I was to provide transportation, and that happened.
Okay, was the caseworker supposed to pick her up and transport her?
She never said that was even an option for her to do when she was informed that we would be using Uber and Chrissy would be taking her to the appointment.
Okay, so Chrissy took her in an Uber.
Yes.
Okay. Are there any services that the department has asked you to do that you're not willing to do?
No, there's none.
Okay, so as far as her therapy with Ms. Jordan, what would you like to see happen?
To be honest, as far as the therapy between her and I and Kinsley, her and I'm not comfortable with that because of the extreme bias shown by her already. If it would be a different therapist, I would be completely fine with that. Just start over fresh because of the problems that have already occurred and the obvious bias shown by her.
Okay, and can you tell the court a little bit about what you perceive to be this bias by Ms. Jordan?
It was either December 17th or 19th, even before Kinsley even had an appointment. Got a very scathing email from her that should be in the evidence somewhere, that she already had questions about my ability to be logical and love Kinsley appropriately. And still, I have yet to talk to her. I know who she is now, but other than that, I know what her voice sounds like. So how does she come to this conclusion without talking to me to figure things out? That she already has this mindset and this bias going in instead of being with an open mind going in.
Okay. And again, you've tried to reach out to her office multiple times through the portal to try to schedule a conversation with her so you could address some of these issues, and she's never responded.
Absolutely true. Yes.
And those are the screenshots that we've shown the court.
Yes.
Okay. What do you think is in your daughter's best interest?
In my daughter's best interest is to keep communication the way they are. Because contrary to what the therapist thinks, she has a blast over here when she is here. We have a lot of fun. We do a lot of crafts. We do a lot of online school stuff. I mean, her bedroom is plastered with all of her artwork. Chrissy is an amateur artist. She loves doing artwork with Chrissy. She loves to snuggle in and watch movies. You know, I teach her some basics on how to cook. She's excited about those while she's here. That her bedroom is plastered with the awards that she gets from doing schoolwork online. Her artwork is plastered throughout the house. So I am not sure where all this supposed fear of being here and fear of Chrissy is, because she refers to Chrissy as Mama Llama, and she refers to herself as Baby Llama, and I'm Daddy Llama.
Okay. Now, when you and your ex got divorced, you guys had a divorce decree that gave you joint managing conservatorship. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
And you guys were to share all the rights and duties by agreement, correct?
Yes. Yeah, mutual agreement.
Mutual agreement. And so these issues with therapy, how did they come about? If you guys were supposed to agree, how did we have so much trouble getting Kinsley into therapy to begin with?
Because I was never informed who the therapist was. I have never been put on the HIPAA paperwork. And so I can't call the therapist, or the therapist can't reach out to me to get both sides of the story from the parents on what's going on. Because it's my belief that the truth lies somewhere in the middle of knowing what either side is.
Okay.
And that with each therapist, the issues that Heather wants to present as the reason for therapy change with each therapist.
So the problem here has not been that you are resistant to Kinsley having therapy. It's just that you want to be involved in the therapy process. And it seems like that never really happens. Is that fair to say?
Yes, very fair to say.
Okay. I'll pass the witness, Judge.
Sorry. Anybody have any questions about Mr. O'Neill?
I got a couple.
Okay, Mr. Sturmer.
Mr. O'Neill, you said that you're not resistant to Kinsley attending therapy. Can you tell us how many therapists she's had in the last year?
I was 2, possibly 3.
And you canceled all 3 of those therapists, right?
No, I did not. After
Okay.
talking to the therapist, sending them the original divorce decree where I am to be on the HIPAA paperwork, and talking to the therapist after that was cleared up and explaining what's going on, they decided that therapy could not continue, that it needed to go someplace else.
Because you canceled it, right?
No, sir, because I raised concerns about it. And my concerns drew a lot of questions of the mother being honest with the issues going on.
Okay. So when did you get diagnosed with all these medical conditions?
February of last year.
Okay, so when was the last time you left your home?
Took the dog out to go to the bathroom yesterday evening.
When was the last time you really left your home?
I haven't for quite a while. To go to a
When was the
doctor's
last time you left
appointment.
your home?
Do it.
When was the last time you left your home? When was the last time you went anywhere?
About a month ago for labs.
Okay. So you can go to the doctor, do your labs and everything. Why can't you go to an in-person therapy appointment?
Because it's not safe for me if I don't have to go out. It's
Okay.
safer for me to be at home.
I'll pass a witness.
Anybody else have any questions?
Your Honor, I've just
Ms.
got
McClure,
one.
sorry, I didn't see you. Ms. McClure?
Yes. Mr. O'Neill, your attorney showed us an exhibit. It seemed to indicate that it wasn't that they didn't want to contact you or communicate with you, it was that you were doing it wrong. Did you ever try to do it right?
Can you explain that a little bit better?
I believe it said something along the lines of, you don't get to submit a separate intake, that the mom does that, or she's already done that. And I don't get from that that didn't mean that you couldn't actually update the therapist. It's just that the assessment or the intake had already been done and you were demanding to do your own. And she was saying her system wasn't set up to do that. So she was telling you that there was no problem to solve. You can't do another intake, but that wasn't something that you could accept, correct?
No, she did not explain that I could update anything. She never responded after that she blocked communication, pretty much, in my opinion.
So basically what you're saying is that you would love her to go to a therapist as long as you can control everything about that therapist.
No, ma'am. I would like her to go to a therapist where the therapist talks to both parents prior and can have an idea of what's going on before she meets with Kinsley.
Pass the witness.
All right, thank you, Ms. McClure. Anybody else?
Yes, ma'am. One brief follow-up.
I do.
Okay, hold on, Ms. Mystic next. Okay, go on, Ms. Mystic.
Sorry. Mr. O'Neill, this is Dory Mystic. Have you been taking pictures or have you taken pictures of Kinsley where you have her lift her shirt and take it of her upper region?
No. The last time she was here, she had bites on her legs and asking her mom about it. And she did lift her shirt, take a picture of her back to show red marks and bites there.
So you or Christy are not asking her so that you can have evidence of something by taking pictures of her.
No, what the deal was is that we wanted to show what we were talking about. Instead of her mother asking,
oh, go
what do
ahead,
you
sorry.
mean?
Go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It was to show her mother what we were talking about.
Did Kinsley ever express being uncomfortable at almost 9 years old of lifting her shirt for pictures to be taken of her?
No.
Okay. Has she ever indicated anything to y'all about talking about her mother in her presence in a negative fashion, that's upsetting to her?
No.
Have you recorded your conversations with Kinsley when and have her talk about her mother?
No.
You've not provided hours of recordings of this child?
Not since it was court ordered not to do it.
My
Yeah,
question was, have you recorded the child? I'm not talking about since this case, but you've recorded this child. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. And where she would be seated and you would ask her questions.
Yeah, she's been asked questions to better explain what she's talking about.
Okay. And I understand you're saying you haven't done that since this CPS case. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. Were you advised that, do you recall the hearing in December where it was said that you each would be able to provide your intake with Miss Jourdain after I spoke with Miss Jourdain? Do you remember that?
yes,
Do you remember the judge changed the order after it was found out that Miss Jourdain just takes intake from one parent, but that didn't preclude you from being able to submit information that you wanted her to know?
no, I was never informed of that.
Okay. Did she not put in there that she doesn't, her computer system doesn't take what we call formal intake, but did she ever say that you couldn't write her through the portal or anything like that to be able to talk with her?
No, it
Okay.
wasn't until January that I got the approval through the portal after Kinsley's
Right,
appointment started.
right, because her appointment's like December 27th, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then like I'm on the portal, you're on the portal to be able to see and sign in, and that's what you have access to, is that right?
Yes,
So are you saying you have requested an appointment with Miss Jourdain?
with the chat. Yes, that's never been responded to.
Okay. But as we sit here today, you do not want to use her anymore to do any therapy, is that right? With you and your daughter?
That's correct, given the bias already shown.
What if she's got a rapport with your daughter? What if your daughter has seen her 4 times? And there's good rapport.
From what Kinsley has said, the only reason why she likes Miss Jourdain is because she is an animal lover like herself.
Okay. And that would be called rapport, wouldn't it?
I suppose it could be.
Okay. And I want to make sure I understood, you've never in the past, when this child has been with a therapist, contacted them and then said no longer using the therapist?
When the therapist has refused to answer or not allow me to speak with them, yes.
Okay. So has there been any therapist that you've ever agreed with for Kinsley?
I have sent Heather's other attorney for the other case multiple lists and top picks of therapists
That was a
Heather
bad
never
question.
responded to.
Sorry, that was a bad question. The therapist that the child has been set appointments with, have you ever agreed with any of those therapists that she's actually had appointments?
When I don't know anything about the therapist until after the fact, and letting the therapist know that it has to be mutual agreed upon, I need to be on the HIPAA paperwork. You know, if we can get through that process, if that would have been done from the start, it wouldn't have been an issue.
Pass the witness.
Anybody else have any questions, Mr. O'Neill?
Just briefly, Judge, just to clarify.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So, Mr. O'Neill, it was your understanding that the court's ruling was that you were to do your own intake. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
And maybe that was right, maybe that was wrong, but that was your understanding.
Yes.
And so you reached out to this therapist to try to do your intake, right?
Yeah.
And she wouldn't let you do it.
Absolutely not.
Okay. And then you were told to go through the portal to visit with her, right?
Yes,
And you tried to do that, didn't you?
I did.
And all of those contacts have been left pending and they've never been reviewed or approved by Ms. Jourdain, have they?
No, they have not.
And Ms. Jourdain's never spoken to you about the therapy, has she?
No,
She's never talked to you about her daughter, about your
No.
daughter. She's
No.
never provided you with any of her therapy notes or documentation or anything like that.
yeah, absolutely nothing.
Okay. Now the pictures that you took of Kinsley, they were bug bites on her back? Is that what happened?
Yeah, on her back and on her legs.
Okay. And did you take those pictures to text them to her mother?
Yes, to her mother and Mary as well.
Okay. To try to figure out what was going on with that.
Exactly.
I'll pass the witness.
Thank you, Ms. Kay. Anybody else? Ms. Kay, you want exhibits 1 through 4 admitted?
Please, Judge. I'm sorry, that was sloppy of me.
That's okay. Any objection?
No
Okay.
objection.
1 through 4 is admitted. Okay, Ms. Kay, next witness.
We rest.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, Ms. Mystic, anything?
Oh, Miss McClure didn't, or is she good?
She already went. She didn't have any witnesses.
Oh,
Actually, Your Honor, Ms. Jourdain's still here. I'd like to recall her so she can just answer a couple of questions that have been raised by Mr. O'Neill's attorney.
Okay, hold on. Ms. Mystic, do you have any witnesses?
it was just gonna be Miss Jourdain, but I'm glad Miss McClure can go ahead of me.
Okay, go on, Ms. McClure.
Yes, Ms. Jourdain, you've been listening to the testimony. You are muted, so you can unmute yourself so that you can answer the question in a second. Could you explain about the intake situation and why Dad could not do his own separate intake?
Judge, if I may, I'll stipulate that that's her office's process and they can only do one.
Okay. Okay, then Ms. Jourdain, could you explain to us about one of the exhibits we saw? It had multiple places where appointments were requested. Can you explain what that meant?
Those are appointments that were requested by Miss Wingrove for Kinsley.
So they had nothing to do with Dad actually asking for an appointment?
No, and my HIPAA compliant log can identify the IP address that it was requested from, and they're all consistent with Mom's IP address. They were not initiated by Mr. O'Neill.
So you do have a way for him to set up an appointment, correct?
Yes, ma'am. He may request an appointment anytime, but those appointments were not requested by him or for him.
So there is a way if he wanted to make an appointment for him to do so.
Yes, ma'am.
And as far as your HIPAA log shows, he has not done so as of yesterday.
Correct.
Is there also a way for him to share information with you other than doing an intake, a second intake, which is not allowed in your system?
He can do his own independent intake documentation. He specifically requested to do Kinsley's intake documentation.
So he requested to do something that had already been done.
Yes, ma'am. And the system won't let me duplicate that.
But if there is any other information he felt was important for you to know, is there a way for him to get you that information?
Yes, his access allows him to upload any documents, videos, pictures, anything to the portal that he would like to do so. And he can request documentation such as like a demographics or a family history, and he can complete that and provide it as well.
Okay. Do you have a response to his allegation that there is bias?
There's not bias in my opinion. I imagine he thinks there is, but he was pushing specifically to do the double intake and was not accepting that he could not. And he was pushing for me to immediately put him as a contact. But as I stated, I had no history. I didn't even know this was in front of a judge or whatsoever. I just had a trial that was scheduled and somebody insisting to have access to their portal. And I had told him that week we had 7 court hearings, 5 of them were one day. And my staff only works 4 days a week, and that there was no help at the office at the moment. And we were attempting to confirm who he was and that he was supposed to have access and that he was creating an issue that didn't exist. It was just a timeline. He was not accepting that and continued to insist that he had to fill out an intake I couldn't provide and that he had to be added prior to me having confirmation of who he was. I advised him of HIPAA and PHI, and then they told me they were going to turn me into the licensing board.
Oh, that escalated rapidly.
Objection
Yes.
side.
So, are you going to be,
Stay.
are you going to be able to overlook the rough beginning so that you can help Kinsley here?
Yes, ma'am. I deal with a lot of tough situations. This isn't the most difficult one I've had to address. And I understand high defenses and I understand, a lot of high emotions. Like we can work through this as long as we're all being solution focused.
All right, thank you. No further questions, Judge.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? No, Ms. Jordan. Once again, help me because I'm not, like I said, I'm not the computer person. These efforts that you just testified to, that Ms. McClure asked you about or that you talked about, how was this communication being done between you and Mr. O'Neill?
Our communication was text message, phone calls, voicemails, and emails.
Okay, is what with him has gone through this portal?
One message. He was provided access, and then January 6th, he provided one message.
Okay, do you know what that message said?
Exhibit, Judge.
It's one of the exhibits. Okay, good. Okay. Would you, with your clients, patients, and their families, do you prefer everything to go through the portal?
Yes, ma'am.
Then there's record of it and there's no he said, she said, all that kind of stuff, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so once again, go back to I'm one of your patients, okay? Or my kid's one of your patients or something. Everything that me or my child needs to do with you can be done through the portal.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Appointments, everything.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What about emergencies?
For emergencies, they have my number and my administrative assistant's number, and they can message to the portal and it will come to us, but we prefer that if it's truly like something that's urgent, then they reach out directly to us if it's a true emergency like 911. But yeah, all of our clients have our direct cell phone lines.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Anybody have any, thank you, Ms. Jordan. Anybody have any more witnesses? No. Okay, I'm happy to hear.
I just wanted to clarify, and I can call Miss Brayley that about this transportation issue. I don't know if the court wants to hear about that.
Yeah, I do. Real
Okay.
quick. Okay, Ms. Brawley, come back.
I'm here.
Go on, Ms. Mason.
There was some testimony about CPS transporting. Are you authorized to transport?
No, ma'am, we are not.
Okay. How come?
Because we don't have TMC of the children, so a parent would have to be present when we transport.
So obviously in FBSS, you don't have TMC, and that never would have been a discussion that you would be able to transport.
Correct.
Okay. And as far as supervised visits, are you able to go to a residence and supervise visits?
I've never done that. We always have the parent come to the office.
Okay. And obviously in this situation, we got to get creative depending on whatever the court orders, but there would have never been a conversation of I'll take her to her appointment.
Correct.
Okay. In the future, do you think it would be better that the appointments occur during mom's times as far as transporting the child to her appointments?
Correct. Yes. And I think mom has set it up that way now.
But obviously, if dad is to have appointments with her and he appears by telehealth, those could be during a time mom has taken the child and she goes in the back with Miss Jordan.
Correct.
And then I'm not saying on the appointments that have been scheduled, but if he wants to schedule some, you would not be able to get her there, but we could work to make sure that child gets there for all her appointments by her mom.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That's all I have. Pat's witness. You're muted, Judge.
Sorry, anybody else have any more questions, Ms. Brawley?
No, ma'am.
No, okay, thank you. Now I'm happy to hear from y'all. Ms. Sturmer,
Judge, in my opinion, we've just got to stop letting Mr. O'Neill control every situation. We're here, we got involved in this case to get this child some help, and we're hoping that maybe we can help these parents learn to co-parent along the way. But if he's just going to be resistant to every single recommendation that the therapist or the court's going to make, then I think he's just going to get left behind, and we just need to move forward and focus just on Kinsley. We're asking that you accept Mr. Jourdain's recommendations to suspend his in-person visits unless they're supervised, and order that the child attend therapy while in mother's possession, and that Mr. O'Neill not cause any more disruptions or attempt to cancel or manipulate the therapy situation.
okay, thank you. Ms. McClure,
I agree with everything Chuck just said. You know, this child needs help to be able to have a healthy relationship with her father, and hopefully, if the girlfriend's going to be long term, hopefully with her as well. And you know, if there are issues, one would hope that both parents would want the issues to be addressed. But you know, Mr. O'Neill paints this portrait of he's just the most loving, adorable, wonderful, helpful parent, and he's done nothing wrong. And yet it's ironic that just about everybody that is involved can't help but notice the pattern of impeding help, impeding assistance, impeding therapy. I would love for him to get on the same page as everyone else and want what's best for this child. That would be the best thing for her, is to have both parents wanting what's best for her. If he won't do it, then I would ask that this court find a way to force it to happen, regardless of what he thinks.
okay, thank you. Ms. Kay,
You know, it's so interesting to me, Judge, because in the family law setting, all the time I have people that come to me and complain about deadbeat dads that just run off, they're not involved, they don't want to do anything. And then, you know, we have this guy who, these people did an agreed final decree of divorce. They both signed it. They're JMC, and the rights and duties are held by agreement. That's the way they set it up. That's what mom signed up for. And he's supposed to have an equal say in the therapeutic treatment of his child. And that's all he's ever really asked for. He's never said she couldn't go to therapy. He just wants to be involved in picking the therapist. He wants to visit with the therapist. He wants to know what's going on with his kid, and he wants to participate equally. I heard a lot of talk about malingering and him lying about having epilepsy. That's why I brought the documentation to the court today, to show he's diagnosed. He's not supposed to leave the house. He does have seizure issues. The last time he left the house was to go get his blood testing done, which is not something that you can do over Zoom. I don't know why the department wants to hold that against him. And he wants to participate in services. He already initiated the co-parenting counseling after the department set him up with somebody that could do it over Zoom, because that's what he needs to do. I don't believe that this is an attempt at manipulation on his part. I think that he's afraid that he's going to get edged out of his kid's life. And he's trying to fight to make sure that that doesn't happen. I haven't heard any testimony. There's not been anything in any of the pleadings or the affidavits or anything like that, that he's ever harmed this child, that, you know, he's ever been arrested, that anything like that. He's never endangered her. I don't believe that there's any good reason, or that it's in the best interest of this child, to cut off his contact with her, when by all accounts, up until very recently, everything was fine. I hear the therapist's concerns. I really do. I think that cutting out a loving parent from this child's life completely is a very, very severe remedy for a problem that could be solved with a little bit of cooperation between him and the therapist. And you heard his testimony. He has tried to reach out to her. He has texted with her. He messaged her over the system that she has. She never responded. She's never visited with him. She's never set an appointment with him. And I don't think that that can all just be put on his shoulders. You know, if he's allowed to upload things to the portal or whatever, how come Ms. Jordan never sat down with him and explained that? You know, I mean, the department is putting all of this responsibility on him to figure all of these things out, but the department's supposed to be helping him figure these things out. That's what he has a caseworker for. That's what the therapist is supposed to be for, to help him understand what he's supposed to do and when he's supposed to do it. The intake thing is a perfect example of that. He heard in court that he was supposed to do a separate intake. And the order changed after that. Well, he doesn't understand that. He's not a lawyer. He's just a regular guy trying to figure out how he can be a part of his kid's life. And that's all that he wants. And he's going to do whatever this court tells him he needs to do to have to be in his kid's life. But honestly, cutting off his visitation with her completely at this point in the case, it seems unnecessary to me. So we would request that the court leave his visitation intact or make whatever changes the court feels is necessary for the best interest of the child, but that he still needs to see his kid, because that's what we think is in her best interest. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kay. Ms. Mystic?
Unfortunately, Judge, we wouldn't be here in this case had there been a therapist that he could agree to. We can say it all different ways, but these folks did a pro se divorce that said subject to the agreement. Ms. Kay's completely right. They did their own, said subject to the agreement. When you can't get an agreement, you set an appointment, and then you tell a therapist, I've got this court order. They're going to, and I think he's right. They did back down. She was seeing a wonderful lady, and that got stopped. She went to see another one, and that one got a grievance filed against her. Unfortunately, if he was a guy wanting to just do what's right for his kiddo, I don't think we'd be here. But nevertheless, we're here. She's seeing a therapist. She's seen her 4 times. She's established a report. It was just testified to that none of those Haven of Hope in the portal were from him except one message, and she responded about the intake. That was just testified to. So, I mean, I'm on the portal. I can see, I could give you that and see 30 different emails from Haven of Hope. I didn't make those. They come because there's appointments made. I think that to change therapists would be not in this child's best interest. I think there are some severe concerns with the child. That's why we're here and having her in therapy. I mean, we've needed her to have therapy for like 1.5 years. And finally, we've got it going. And again, let's change therapists. I don't know what else to do. We've got a kiddo that went from having visits and parents working well to a child that's fearful now, to a significant other in Mr. O'Neill's life. And I agree with Ms. Kay. How else would they get her to the appointment? But her walking upstairs and standing in front of the child and doing all that kind of stuff, there would have been different ways to work it. Maybe we messed up on that, in that, how would we... That's been resolved. Let's not have appointments during his time. I'm not saying that he shouldn't be involved in appointments with his daughter. Absolutely. And I feel like when Miss McClure said eventually bring girlfriend, they're a couple, they're going to be together. But if we've got a child that's fearful, that's indicating that pictures make her uncomfortable, that's not the way it was presented in how he testified. But let's take a step back. Do I think there needs to be no contact? Absolutely not. But I think it needs to be supervised for right now. How that works is if it has to be a Zoom and she comes to my office and we Zoom with him and I monitor, I'll try to make that happen. But I know with FBSS, they don't go in like we have in normal cases where they'll go and supervise the visits and things like that. That's probably what you would have to address of how that would happen. Because I would not want it to be a family member or a friend supervising. It would need to be somebody that does this. I know that there is a supervision agency in Killeen that does on-site. but I don't think there's money for that. Because I do believe, they've provided today, he does have these issues of leaving the home, but I do believe in her best interest at this time. Let's give her some time to see what's going on with this kiddo without the influences, if any. Maybe that'll go away. Maybe there is something going on that we don't know, but let's take a step back. Let her see her dad, if it has to be by Zoom, but just sending her over there. I've got concerns that weren't there before and there now. That's all I have.
Okay, I have two questions. When were the parents divorced? Or what's the date of the divorce decree? Anybody know?
October of 2014.
2014. Okay, when she was little.
When she was 5 months old.
Yeah. Okay, and why, and I probably the affidavit, I didn't read that, I didn't reread the affidavit before today. Why, bottom line, why does Kinsley need to be in therapy in the first place?
Can I answer that?
Loaded
And
question.
everybody can answer it. Whoever, Ms. Heather, you go first, and Ms. Kay, we'll hear from you. Go.
Christmas of 2021, Kinsley came back saying she never wanted to go back to her dad's. After the visits at her dad's house, she started making drawings saying she wanted to die, she wanted to hurt herself. And so that's when I started reaching out for therapy.
Okay, Ms. Kay.
My understanding is that Kinsley witnessed, or it was in the home during a suicide. And that was why my client wanted her to get into therapy.
Okay. Got it. I just didn't know what the root of this was. Okay. We're gonna have a compliance hearing on 3/29. Obviously substituting Ms. Kay for Ms. Kabbalah. Dad's girlfriend is to have absolutely no contact with the child. She is to remain 500 feet from anywhere the child is located. Mr. O'Neill is to visit one time per week for 2 hours, supervised by CPS as arranged by Mr. O'Neill, CPS, and attorney ad litem. Mr. O'Neill can visit virtually one time a week, supervised also by CPS or attorney ad litem. Mr. O'Neill is to attend therapy with Ms. Jourdain as directed and set up by Ms. Jourdain. As the schedule of Mr. O'Neill's appointments and or Kinsley, however y'all work that, is to be sent to Miss Kay by Miss Jourdain or CPS somehow, so Miss Kay knows what the setup schedule is. All communications for Miss Jourdain are to go through the portal. Counseling is dad attended therapy with Miss, I think I already said this, with Miss Jourdain as directed and set up by Miss Jourdain. Co-parenting as directed by CPS. Neither counselor is to have, therapist is to have any involvement with dad's girlfriend unless requested by the specific provider. The girlfriend is not to be in the home where Mr. O'Neill lives during any visits, therapy, or counseling sessions. No recordings are to be made that include the child. Mr. O'Neill must attend all therapy and co-parenting appointments and no excuses since everything's done virtually and he's not supposed to leave the house. So there's my ruling. Okay. Thank y'all. We'll be in recess. We'll see y'all on 3/29. Thank you.